Hi. Hi, this is Gina. Thank you for joining me for this Astrology Chat Live. Today I'm here to talk about Venus retrograde, which just began a couple days ago. And I want to talk about a few things to avoid during this time. And I don't mean to be negative. That's actually something I really don't want to be on my site. But I think that thinking about what not to do can be really helpful sometimes. And I think that that is especially true with retrograde energies. I feel like they're sort of appeased by thinking carefully about things and thinking about sort of what doesn't work and what not to do. But I also think I will lean in the other direction in future videos. I am here every day with these live astrology chats. And I also have horoscopes best read for rising sign on my uh, channel. So be sure to check those out as well. I'll put the final one up today for March. So I'll probably do some other work with this Venus retrograde as well, thinking about the things that we should lean toward. But I think that this is a way to open up the discussion that's pretty clear. And these things are true for this particular Venus retrograde that's happening right now in March and April of 2025. Okay, so I sort of set this up for us. We're going to go through a list of 7 things one at a time. The first is something that you may have heard about Venus retrograde, which is that rules finances. And so sometimes we might be tempted to make purchases that later we regret during a Venus retrograde. We can have a tendency to overspend during a Venus retrograde because Venus is activated. Venus is extra strong, slow, and potent in the sky. And so we're drawn to that luxury. We're drawn to that spending. And there's something about Venus and Aries that's sort of especially self-indulgent, especially quick and impulsive. So also, I feel like Aries can be a bit bold. So I could see this Venus retrograde in particular being a time where people are tempted to move a little too quickly when it comes to spending, like even making a pretty expensive purchase pretty impulsively. I would avoid that. It's a good time to think about it. It's a fine time to carry out a plan that you made before the Venus retrograde. If you want to indulge or do something impulsive, just do something small, right? You can go and pick something up for under $20, as long as it's not too big. Sometimes we can regret our purchases during a Venus retrograde, and with Aries, quick, bold movement, I think that might be extra true this time. So we'll move pretty quickly through that one. That one's pretty straightforward. Okay, don't speak too quickly. So this is going to be especially true once Mercury joins up with Venus for this retrograde. You can't see it here in my chart because, you know what, I can show you here. I'm saying it's covered up like I can't do anything about that. Okay, we have Venus right here, retrograde in Aries. And see, we have Mercury here as well in Aries. Mercury is going to continue to progress forward for a little bit. And then the middle of March, Mercury is going to be retrograde in Aries as well. So we will have both Venus and Mercury retrograde at the same time at that point. And I think especially then, the tendency to speak too quickly could come out, especially when we have Venus and Mercury retrograde there at the same time, right? Aries energy likes to move quickly. Aries wants to go forward right now. But retrograde energy is pulling us in the other direction. Retrograde energy says slow down, rethink, overthink if necessary, just moving forward It's the kind of thing where this is why retrogrades can lead to misunderstandings, because there's part of you moving fast and there's part of you going slow. So it's like being on like the gas and the brake at the same time, and you can sort of skip a step. Like as you're talking, you can forget to say something that's really important, forget to connect two dots that really need to be connected. And that can cause a misunderstanding. It's the moving too quickly that causes the problems. So, in conversation, remember to slow down during this period for sure, especially once Mercury joins up with Venus for this retrograde on March 14th or 15th. 15th. Um, there's another little element to this speaking too quickly, though, and it's because we're in a process. We're in a process, especially right now with so much happening in Aries and Pisces. It makes me think of for some reason the times they are a changin', that song, and when he says don't speak too soon for the wheels still in spin, right? It's like the wheels still in spin here. And so you don't want to speak too soon either. It's not just about speaking too quickly, it's about speaking too soon. We're in process. Forgive me for a sip of water there. We're in process with this Venus retrograde. That's much better. And we don't want to speak too quickly. We don't want to move too quickly. We don't want to interrupt the process too quickly. It could just confuse things. We want to go with the flow a little bit with this. And that might be really hard to do because Aries might really want to advocate for herself. And you should advocate for yourself always. And that won't be a problem during this time with all this Aries energy. But we don't want to interrupt the process. We don't want to speak too quickly or too soon. Okay, let's move forward. I think you get the point. I hope I made sense. I'm probably speaking too quickly. Okay. So yeah, don't initiate something brand new in love. I wanted to talk about this because, oh, no. Don't go too far ahead. Okay, let's leave them both up. We'll talk about them both at the same time since that's what happened to my little video I prepared for today. So don't initiate something brand new in love, and also don't break up. Yes, these are two things I'm thinking for this Venus retrograde. First, I think you hear a lot about not starting a new relationship. And yes and no for that, I think. And I think most astrologers would agree with me with what I'm saying about this here. It's actually a great time to meet someone, right? Especially depending on where this Venus retrograde is falling in your chart. You can check my channel and your horoscope to find out about that. But if it's falling in your seventh house, like if you're a Libra rising, or if you're a Virgo rising and it's falling in your seventh house when it's in Pisces, fifth house placements, could be an amazing time to meet someone. But I wouldn't move totally forward with them until the Venus retrograde is over. It's a great time to meet and start to get to know. It's not a great time to meet and in some big rush and flurry go on a long vacation together, or in some big rush and flurry move in together, or something like that. I also wouldn't necessarily initiate that new step even in a relationship. I'd sort of let it cool out for a minute, let the process spin, even if in a committed relationship, if you've already talked about moving in together and that's already happening, cool. If not, it might not be the best time to bring it up just because there's already enough coming to the surface. I mean, basically, the big idea with the retrograde, with Venus, with the relationship piece, it's nothing to worry about, because what it is anything that needs to be healed or worked with might come to the surface during this time, right? It's more likely to. These different ways that you're feeling, because we're rethinking and revisiting relationship patterns and relationships themselves, it's somewhat likely that problems can come to the surface. So if you don't have any major problems anyway, it's not going to be an issue of Venus retrograde. if you, and as a matter of fact, it'll probably just be deepening for your relationship because you will work out the problems that you do have. And when there's that strong bond, you actually grow closer through doing that, right? Um, but if the problems are something you're trying to avoid, something you're trying to shove down, something that feels really tough, this Venus retrograde can bring them to the surface. And we all have different capacities for working with this stuff. So the reason not to really initiate something brand new in love, whether it's with a new person or an old person, is just that there's enough coming to the surface anyway to deal with, and there's no need to sort of complicate the situation. It's the same thing as not speaking too quickly, um, and not speaking too soon, letting things unfold a bit here, you know, and then breaking up. Sometimes what we say, what astrologers say, what astrology says is that sometimes breakups that happen during this time don't stick, because these problems are more evident and are more on the surface than they usually are. But that only happens for like 40 days while Venus is retrograde out of every um, what is it, year and a half that Venus goes retrograde, every year and a half, every 18 months or so. So as soon as the Venus retrograde is over, the problems don't seem so big anymore and you end up getting back together. So just save yourself the trouble and don't break up in the first place. Okay, don't change your hair. Oh, why do two? Okay, well, maybe those two were meant to come up at the same time as well because they do kind of go together. So let's leave them. Don't change your hair and don't change your aesthetic. Okay, so don't change your hair is in a way frivolous, but also, hey, let's take the advice. I wouldn't make any big changes to appearance because Venus rules aesthetics and appearance and beauty and the way we see things. And our more unusual or sort of latent tastes can come to the surface now, which is really cool. It helps us get in touch, a Venus retrograde, with our own sense of beauty and our own sort of aesthetic sense in the world. But uh, it does kind of call up the more unusual sides of that narrative. So, when the Venus retrograde is over, you might not feel the same way about it as you did when it started. So you don't want to do anything too drastic that you could regret later. And it actually is the same with changing your aesthetic, right? It's one thing to like buy a new dress, a new pair of shoes that normally you wouldn't buy. That's no big deal. That's one small purchase. You might regret it later. And I am talking about not impulse buying. You could regret the small purchase, and not like it after Venus retrograde, but that's something small. But if you like paint your house really different colors that you normally wouldn't choose, you really might later go, I don't like that. I don't like what we did there. So just not making any changes that are too permanent or too difficult to undo, basically, in your own appearance and in the aesthetics around you, because the more sort of latent or unusual sides of our taste are coming to the surface right now and might change when everything is over. Okay, also very, very, very important. Don't neglect yourself. Venus retrograde is also about our relationship with ourself, our self-worth, worthiness. It's not just about our relationship with others, and it's not just about finances, and it's not just about our aesthetic sense. It's about your relationship with yourself and feelings of worthiness. You really cannot let in more than you think you deserve, you know? So finding ways to care for yourself and move through any feelings that hold you back during this time is well spent. Doing things to improve the way you see yourself, improve the relationship with yourself, keeping promises to yourself, making a pledge to do something good for yourself and then sticking to it, buying flowers for your home, going to bed a little early, letting yourself off the hook, lowering your standards for yourself and for others, not in a bad way, not lowering your standards, but like lowering your expectations, um, releasing this feeling of needing everything to be perfect. I've really been connecting so much lately with this south node. You can see it peeking out here in the chart. This south node in Virgo that has us releasing the negative sides of Virgo signature in order to let in the positive. And I think that that is working so well with this Venus retrograde, you know, releasing those negative sides of Virgo that can be too critical, too hard on self, too hard on others, that can overplan, overdo, overfunction, be too detail oriented and sort of lose the forest through the trees for the trees. Instead, once that is released, those higher vibrations of Virgo can come to the forefront, which are more like sincere, genuine connection with others, service, and compassion without judgment, just from this place of wanting to help in like a really practical way and being of really practical help. There's something really nice about that happening with this Venus retrograde as well. And I think we can all learn to release a little bit of that perfectionism when it comes to ourselves, wherever that's falling in your chart. But I will be back with more in the future. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. I'll be back again tomorrow.